Russia, Russia, Russia. Do you remember that drumbeat for the last 4 years? Democrats and their mainstream media lapdogs frantically told us that President Donald Trump and his associates colluded with Russia to win the 2016 election. Of course, that same media eagerly pushed a bogus dossier, but they avoided revealing the connections between it and Hillary Clinton's campaign, or doing anything on their own to try to discredit it, as real journalists would. My next guest, however, co-founded the Federalist, where they actually do real journalism. If you can believe, there's still some that exists, and it does. Please welcome to the show, Sean Davis. Sean, good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
You know, we were talking to Congressman Jordan earlier about this whole Russia collusion story. You guys at the Federalist were really calling out a lot of the details of this early on. What was it that kind of gave you insight that a lot of the publications just weren't seeing?
It's a great question. I think we realized the whole thing was a con when the so-called dossier came out on January 10th, 2017. Recall, this was a couple days after Comey did his little ambush extortion meeting with Trump, where he said, oh, the Russians, they have you over a barrel. And then BuzzFeed came out and published this entire dossier. And the second we read it, that moment we knew this thing's false. It's a con.
Sean, historically, journalists have had two great qualities: curiosity and cynicism. They were curious about everything, and they took nothing for granted, took nothing at face value, and they were naturally cynical, and they wanted to sort of make sure somebody proved a story. What happened to those virtues?
I think what happened is we don't have journalists really anymore. We have propagandists. And when you look at the corrupt corporate media, your Washington Post, your New York Times, they do not exist to report facts. They exist to push an agenda. And what they got with this whole Russia thing was they got a perfect little story gift wrapped for them. They didn't care if it was true because it went after somebody they hated, Donald Trump. And so they ran with it without asking any basic questions about, is this true? Are these sources credible? Can we prove it? They actually went out and said things that they had confirmed in the dossier, which we now know were total lies that somebody's been indicted over. They didn't care about the facts. They cared about the agenda.
And speaking of that, this week, obviously the big news story, the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict of not guilty on all counts. The media has been saying this was about racism, even though everybody involved was white. I never could understand how that would be racist. And they basically tried this kid, who was 17 at the time this all happened, just turned 18, and they basically tried him and convicted him in the court of public opinion. I mean, does this kid now go sue these folks, and has he got a shot at that?
I hope so. I mean, we're supposed to have...
Me too.
He should.
Yeah.
He should end up owning CNN.
Oh, wouldn't that be lovely?
Along with Nick Salmon, who the media also tried to destroy. We're supposed to have trial by jury in this country. What we've actually have now with the corrupt media is trial by fury, that they want to charge you, convict you, and sentence you before you ever get your day in court. And they didn't just do it with Kyle Rittenhouse. They did it with Nick Salmon. They did it with Brett Kavanaugh. They did it with Donald Trump. And they'll do it to every last one of us if they ever get the opportunity.
Is there any way to fight back effectively, successfully?
I think there is. I think the first thing we can do is actually stand up and say, no, that's not true. There's a reason these corrupt big tech companies want to censor us so much, and why they want to shut us down is because they know when people can get up and say what's true, it is a massive threat to the people who control the narratives. The best thing you can do is just stand up and say, that's not true. That's not real.
What is the biggest challenge that you guys have faced at the Federalist? I mean, it's a very popular publication among people who are constitutionalists. And I'll add conservatives, but you know, not everyone is a constitutionalist is conservative. Not everyone is conservative, maybe a constitutionalist. I think it's important to be a true believer in the Constitution. What's the biggest challenge that you guys have faced? Because you're out there on the front lines, but you're trying to get to the truth.
I think our biggest problem is what's happening with big tech now, with Facebook, with Google. They have signed on to a particular side's agenda. It's often the Democrat Party, it's often Communist China. And they've decided if you say things that they don't want you to say and you say things they don't want people to hear, they're going to shut you down. So the constant rolling censorship, the shadow banning, the attempt to shut down voices they don't like, I think that's the biggest threat to us. The biggest threat to really any independent media is when you have so few companies controlling so much information, they have the power to shut you down and disappear you. So I think that's our big challenge.
There was an incident just a couple of weeks ago where President Biden denied that there was going to be any payouts to illegal aliens for being separated for a period of time. The very next day, the ACLU and other government agencies had to come out and admit, no, actually, we are going to pay people up to $450,000 per person. And then the day after that, he came and defended all that. I don't remember seeing any of the mainstream press getting upset that they'd been lied to.
No, and it's funny when you look back at how they covered Donald Trump. If he came out at 12:01 p.m. and said, good morning, they'd say, he's a liar. We got to take him out. This man's a liar. And yet you have Biden come out and say about that $450,000 plan, no, that's garbage. I'd never do that. That's garbage. And then his own administration comes out and kind of pats him on the head. Oh, that's crazy, Uncle Joe. He didn't run things. No, it was actually all true. Yeah. There's no accountability at all for the lies that the left constantly spews.
Sean, I hope that you will continue to be bold and out front in the world of reporting and journalism. We appreciate the Federalist for doing it. You can find out more about Sean Davis and his work at the Federalist. Go to Huckabee.tv. That's where you'll find a connection to Sean Davis and the publication, The Federalist.